All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shalise Simmons, and I am the Program Coordinator for the Learning and Organizational Development Unit. In today's session, Excel 101 will be presented by Debbie Lewis, who is also a part of the Learning and Organizational Development Unit. Just a little housekeeping before we begin. This session is being recorded, so that is where you'll see the continue. You can hit the continue button um, uh, to allow the recording to go forth. Mics are muted right now. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. This session is 60 minutes. Hopefully refreshments are available in your kitchen and the restrooms are nearby. But without further ado, I will turn the time over to Debbie.
Hello, welcome everybody. I hope you had a chance to go to the first session this morning. I was a little bit late, but it sounded like you guys were having a great time. Carol, I loved your improv skills. They were great. I think some other people were doing that too. So welcome to Excel 101. I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation here. And Shalise has told me she's going to keep an eye on the chat box to make sure I'm aware if anybody's asking any questions. So, all right. Now if I can get my mouse to work. Seriously, dude. Hold, please. It was working like 10 seconds ago, right, Shalise?
Yes.
All right, here we go. All right.
Okay.
I have gained control of my mouse. All right, so a little brief overview for you. This is the Excel 101 class, so please keep that in mind. I'm going to give you an introduction into the Excel environment. So we'll go over the parts and pieces of Excel. So if someone's trying to give you support, you can figure out what they're talking about when they say, oh, click on this tab or click on this group. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can view your data in Excel, including freezing panes, column width, row height, formatting your cells, and deleting or hiding columns and or rows. Managing your data, including using the fill handle to copy formulas or other data down columns or into other cells. We're going to talk a little bit about sorting and filtering, how to find, replace, conditional formatting for columns, and doing some manipulation of the data, for example, changing a column of data into individual or a cell of data into individual columns. And then I'm going to go over one formula for you, or it's actually considered a function called Concatenate, where you can bring multiple cells of data together. So first, we're going to start off with the environment in Excel. This is a worksheet program or a spreadsheet program. So each individual file is considered a book, a workbook. You'll notice that the opening name, like the default file name for Excel is book 1. And then you'll change the file name based on whatever you want to call it. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see these are our worksheets. And this particular example had 3 worksheets. Next is the ribbon, and this is across the top. And this is pretty much true in every Microsoft product. They have a ribbon where you're going to find navigation options. Tabs are located across the top as well, indicated by the blue ovals on this. So we have examples of things like, file, home, insert, page layout. So those are your tabs going across the top. And then with each of those tabs, within each of those tabs, they'll have different group options. So in this case, we have clipboards. On the file tab, we have clipboard, font, alignment, number, styles. That's actually the home tab. Next, we have an individual cell. So you can see this is highlighted by the orange rectangle. In this example, this is cell C4. One other thing I wanted to point out about the groups up here, sorry. If you want to open a particular group, just click on the little box with the downward right arrow on it, circled here by the purple oval, and that will open up that group and the additional options available in that particular group. And then last thing on this slide are the pink rectangles, and those are just indicating ranges of cells, which you may use in formula writing. All right, I am going to go ahead and turn off my video because my, well, I have to get pretty close to my computer to see my screen. And I have some internet connections issues. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop that, but I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. All right. So are you seeing my Excel spreadsheet? Can somebody give me a verbal yes?
Yes.
Okay. Because now I'm not seeing any of my Zoom windows. There we go. All right, still see the Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
All right. All right, so I have just downloaded some data from a Qualtrics registration survey in this example. So the first thing I wanted to show you how to do is to take this data and add it to another file. So this is just straight out of Qualtrics, and I want to add this to a file where I'm keeping registrations. Maybe I've taken multiple, like I've exported the data multiple times during the course of the registration time. So I'm going to right click on this sheet down here called Webinar Registration Test. And I'm going to copy this sheet. So I've right clicked, I'm going to select move or copy. I'm going to go ahead and create a copy. And if I just stopped here and clicked OK, it would create a copy of this sheet within this spreadsheet. But I want to put it into, like I said, my other file that I've been keeping track of all the registrations. So I'm going to click on this little drop down and I want to put it into book, this Excel 101. So I'm going to say, okay, so this has switched me over. Hopefully you can still see now my file name is Excel 101 demo formatted. So you can see now I have this webinar registration test sheet within this file. Now, what I typically do is to keep track of my data, because you can see we can get multiple sheets, and you can have hundreds of sheets in any one file. So I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this to raw data. I usually keep a copy of my raw data directly out of Qualtrics or wherever I'm getting the data from. And you'll see that I already have raw data labeled here, so I can't like call two sheets the same thing. That's one thing you cannot do. So I'm going to go ahead and rename that. And I just did that by right clicking, or you can double click on the name and then make sure you hit the enter key, or it will not keep that name. So if I just click off of this and go to a different tab, I had already hit the enter key, but it would have changed that. So then what I do is I make a copy of that raw data file sheet in my book, and that's the sheet that I start to manipulate. So one of the ways that you can control what you can see in your spreadsheet is, say I want to know that, you know, I have this raw data in here, but I don't want to see this tab. It takes up space. It makes it more difficult for me to navigate around, especially if I have a lot of sheets in here. So I'm right clicking and I can hide this sheet. So now I've got my Excel 101 demo. So this is the copied data into here. All right. One of the things that I typically do when I'm getting data out of Qualtrics, I get rid of this third row because this has a bunch of column headers in here that aren't really necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this row. So again, I right click and I have selected that row, and then I can select delete. I've already done that over in this file. One of the things I told you about was filtering. Filters can be really helpful for, looking for data, especially if you have a lot of rows of data. One thing I didn't mention when I was going through the layout of Excel is your columns are labeled with letters, and then your rows are numbered down the left-hand side. So one thing I want to add on here is a filter. So I select the row that's immediately above my first row of data. In this case, I have 2 column headers. So I just clicked on that row, number 2. And I'm going to come up here into my editing group. And I'm going to select sort and filter, little drop down. I'm going to select filter. So what this has done is add a little drop down next to each of my column headers here. So I can go in here and make selections and do sorting and filtering. Sometimes you get data out of Qualtrics or wherever you're getting data from, and you have some extraneous columns in here that you really don't want to see. There's 2 different ways you can handle that. One way is to go ahead and hide those columns. So if I click on the column headers, the B, C, D, E, F, G, I can right click then and I can say hide. The other thing I can do is just delete those. So that was another option on there. I highly suggest that if you are using data from Qualtrics, go ahead and keep that response ID column because if you ever need to go back and refer to the data, those are individual identifiers for that row of data and that person's responses. The other thing I typically keep is the recorded date. That way I know when they responded to that survey. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this other information up until my first name. So I'm going to delete these. So that's just a little bit about how you can manipulate what you're seeing in your data. I'm going to go ahead and hide the column A and B because I don't really need them. Another nice thing is if you want to adjust the column width, when your cursor, you see how my cursor looks like a downward arrow? If I move it over here to the line between column C and D header, it changes into the line with the double arrows. If I just double click here, like regular click, it's going to adjust that column width to the widest piece of data in that column. I am the kind of person that doesn't like to see all of that space in my Excel spreadsheet, so I typically don't do that. I don't keep them wide open, but I know a majority of people out there do like to do that. If you want to do a fast adjustment so that all of your columns are adjusted to the width of the data, just highlight all your columns, come over here to the last one, and then do that same action. When your cursor looks like a line with 2 arrows on it, you can double click and it will adjust all of your columns. I'm going to quick undo that because I've hidden some columns for some of the examples that I'm going to show you. So that's a little bit about adjusting your column width. You can do the same thing with row height if you want to. You can also just do a right click and do column width and just put a number in there. Say I want this to be 20 instead of 16.55. So you can adjust it that way as well. Another way you can view your data, say you want to make sure that you can see that email address and you have a lot of other columns over to your right-hand side, and you want to be able to see this person's name and email all, no matter how far you scroll over to the right. So we're going to use freeze panes in this option. in this example. So I'm going to go up here to my tab that says View, and I'm going to click on this little drop down for freeze panes. So you have multiple options here. I can either freeze my top row, I can freeze my first column, or if I am clicked in an individual cell, in this case, I'm clicked in J3, I can freeze it right there at that point. So if I click freeze panes here, you'll notice that it will insert a line here, and you can't really see the line because I have my header shaded, but if I scroll over here, you can see that now all of the email addresses remain visible no matter how far I scroll over to the right. So that can be helpful if you've got a lot of columns of data. I'm going to go ahead and unfreeze that. And that's how you just adjust it for freezing and unfreezing. Sometimes I'll get into the middle of a cell or a spreadsheet, and I've filtered through my data, and I didn't realize that I selected freeze panes in an odd place. So if you're missing some of your data, you notice that you should be seeing something in there and you're not seeing it, go ahead and check your freeze panes, because you might have frozen your panes in an odd manner, and it's preventing you from seeing that. All right, so one of the other ways we can view our data, this column here, column J, has phone numbers in it. These make them really hard to read because it's just a really long number, right? So the way we can format this column is to format the data in this column is to click on the column header, and then I'm going to go ahead and right click, and then I'm going to do format cells. So I'm selecting format cells, and then I know that under special, there is an option to format numbers in a column or in an individual cells as phone numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and select that option. And the default is to do a US phone number. And I'm going to say OK. So what this does is it puts those parentheses around the area code, and then it puts the space and the hyphen. Bonus points for anybody who can recognize my phone number. Popular song, right? Anybody? Anyway, all right, moving on. So that's a little bit about formatting cells and like viewing your data. Anybody have any questions about that so far?
You're good to go, Debbie.
Okay, all right. Next, I wanted to show you the fill handle, or copying down someone's, like whatever data might be in there. So say I wanted everybody to have my phone number. Yes, this is not a realistic example, but you have something in this cell that you want to copy down the entire column. You'll notice that my cursor changes. So if my cursor looks at like that solid plus white symbol, that's just when I'm selecting something. If I move my cursor slightly, you can see where it changes into the cross with 4 arrows on each of those points, right? If I click now, I can move data. So I can move my phone number over to here. All right. I love Excel because we have the magical Control Z. If only everything were that easy, we could just undo 2020. Anyone? Okay, so that's one way I can move that data around. The other thing I can do is if I move my cursor, and you see this little box down in the bottom right-hand corner of that cell, there's a solid square box. If I hover over that, do you see how my cursor has changed into a black plus symbol? There's no arrows on there. So if I grab that with my cursor, like my mouse, I'm just clicking on that and I drag it, it's going to drag that the contents of that cell down your column. Okay. And I'm going to show you an example of this when I get to writing a formula later. And again, I'm going to undo that because I don't really want everybody to be calling me as, you know, with that phone number. All right. So I showed you earlier how to put on these filters by clicking on the row And then coming over to on the Home tab, I clicked on the Sort filter. So what can we do with these? Let's say that you want to only see who is in session 1, signed up for session 1. One of the things we can do with our filters is to filter. Well, that's what they're called, right? They're filters. So I'm going to go and get rid of uncheck select all, and then I only want to see who's in session 1. So if I click on session 1 here and say okay, look, it's showing me who's in session 1. Now, another thing that I can do, if I want to keep track of only the people that are in session 1, it's sometimes a nice idea to go ahead and copy the data. So like I can do a Control C, or you can come up here to copy. You can do the right click, whatever works for you. I like keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to open up a new sheet. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do a Control V as in Victor for paste. Okay, so you see what that did? That took everything that was from that, that copy, and it took out the rest of the people. It only has these 16 people now for session 1. Now, I don't really like the way this data looks when it came in. I'm going to go back to my original, I want to go back to my original column widths, for example. While the data is still highlighted, I can right click here and I can, for example, click on paste special and select this little column like clipboard that has the column widths. So it will change it to what your column widths were of the original file. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to name this session 1. So I know this is where, my session 1 participants are. Now let's say I don't like this, where this is sitting in my file. You can also grab any of your tabs and move them around in your file. So if you want those to be in alphabetical order, for example, you're keeping track of something, or this would be in time order. So session 1 comes first, then session 2, session 3. So I'm going to go back to my original. So all this data is still here because I've copied it. And I'm going to go ahead and clear my filter. So I'm going to click on select all. Okay. So another thing we can do with these filters is say we're looking for a particular person. So I know that I can click on this drop down here and I can click for and look for, the person with the last name Mouse. Oh, look. All I have to do is type that in there and I can find that person. So if you have a lot of rows of data, so if you have hundreds and hundreds of rows of data, the filters are really useful. You just come back in here and clear your filter. So use those filters. They're great, great tools. Find and replace is another feature that I use a lot. So say all of these November dates should actually be like October dates. So I can come in here and I can either select the column because I know where the data lives that I want to do the find and replace on. And I can come up here to the editing group and click on find. And I'm going to go ahead and do replace because I want to change all my Novembers to Octobers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a replace all. And it's only going to do what's in that column. And it's saying that we've made 34 replacements. So you can see that's now changed. And that can be helpful if you're writing a formula and you discover that, wait, I did that on the wrong cell. You can adjust the formula by doing a find and replace. There's lots of things that find and replace can be useful for, which I'm sure you've discovered in Word and using other Microsoft products. I wanted to show you, I already showed you conditional, I showed you formatting of the phone numbers, but you can also do something called conditional formatting. Some people really like the use of like different colors to draw attention to things. So for example, if I want to make all of the different sessions here in this one column a different color, we would highlight that column header and come up here to the Conditional Formatting tab, highlight Cells Rule, and we're going to do, let's see, Text that contains is what the option that we're going to pick for this time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the cell that has the text that I want to highlight. So you'll see I clicked in cell K3, and it has put everything that said session 1, November, whatever, into this light red. Let's say I want to do those as yellow, and just say, okay. I'm going to do the conditional formatting again. And I'm going to change the session 2 people into a different color. So session 2, let's make those green fill. And then I'm going to do a third. I want to know who are those people I need to follow up with that they want a recording of the workshop that they can't attend because of the date. So I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to go ahead and leave that as red because it draws attention in my mind. So there's a way you can sort. Another nice reason to have those filters on there, you'll see there's now an option to filter by color. So if I know that all of the people that said I can't attend are in this red color, I can filter and I can find quickly the people that are, can't attend. Another way to use your filters is to alphabetize. So say I want everybody to be sorted in this spreadsheet by last name. So I can click on this filter here and I can say sort A to Z. Okay. You can see I've already applied a conditional formatting here. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I did here. So this person has registered twice, unbeknownst to her, probably. So the way I highlight duplicate values, again, if you had hundreds of rows of data, this is a nice feature to highlight that column, come up here to conditional formatting again, highlight cells rule, and then duplicate values. Okay. And then I can also clear the rules that are on those cells. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the second entry for Sarah because she doesn't need to be registered twice. And it is the same person. Okay. All right. The next thing I wanted to show you was text to columns. And I've got some things hidden in here. Okay. So say somebody sends you a list of people and it's in a Word file and you really need those names separated out for first name, last name, email address, whatever. They sent you a bunch of information in that one column. Okay. So in this case, we want to separate the number, the first name, and the last name into separate columns. So if I come over here and I click on this column, I want to do text to columns. That feature is on the Data tab. Right over here in the Data Tools, we have text to columns. So I'm just going to click on that. We have a delimited. We're going to use delimited because there are different amounts of data. So Annie Alvarez has more characters than Carolyn Kane, for example. So I'm going to click Next. So I'm demonstrating a way you should probably not do this because if you look at the data that's in here, so what's going to happen is I'm going to select delimiters. So whatever you select in this list here, it's going to get rid of the character and put a column space or insert that into a separate column for your data here. So if I click on the space here, you see how it puts that into a different column, and then I can do other, let's say we want to get rid of the period, we can do that as well. And you see how the period disappeared. But before I do this, I want to make sure that I have room for this data to move. So I'm going to go ahead and insert some blank columns over here to the right, because this is where the data will go once it's separated out. So I'm going to do about 3 or 4 columns. I'm right clicking and I'm clicking on insert. And this gives me a bunch of columns. So now I'm going to go back and do that same action. I'm going to go text to columns and then delimited, next. And then I'm going to click on space and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that other. Now, if they had included email addresses in this column as well, then and you clicked on the other and entered a decimal point here, it would have separated out the email addresses. Like it would have separated my OSU from my EDU and put them in separate columns. So be very careful when you're using this text to column feature, that you're paying attention to what's in the data preview pane down here. I'm going to go ahead and say next, and then I'm going to say finish. It's going to say there's already data there. Are you sure you want to do that? And I'm going to say yes, because, well, there isn't any data there. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these extra columns. So did you see how that happened? Any questions about that?
Nope, you're good to go.
Okay. So another thing I wanted to show you, I wanted to go the other direction with that and unhide. Is a concatenate formula. And that again is bringing together information. So say I want to go the other direction. I want to bring together the first name and last name. That formula is called concatenate. So you start your formulas off with equal signs. And then I'm going to start concatenate, spelling it out. And I always spell it wrong. You can use either version. The concatenate is an older version. So what I've done is I double clicked on the formula name, and it just opened this up for me. Now I can see that it's asking me for what's the first piece of text that I want to put into this cell. Well, I want Annie's first name to appear. So I'm just going to click over here on cell C3, and it puts that into the formula bar up here. Okay. The next thing I want is a space to appear in between the two, the first name and last name. So I'm going to put a comma into my formula. And then I'm going to open quotes, because any type of text, whether it's a space, a period, a colon, whatever comma you want to enter into the cell you want it to concatenate, you need to open up your quotes. I'm going to go ahead and click my space bar once and then close my quotes. And I'm going to hit a comma. And then I'm going to click on the last name, because I want that to be the next thing in that cell. And then I'm going to close my parentheses. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter. And you can see that this is Annie Alvarez now. But when I click on it, you can see that the formula is still up here in the formula bar, right? So from earlier, we learned that we can copy down an entire column by clicking here. So I want this formula to copy down. So now we have everybody's first and last name in one cell instead of multiple cells. Now, I like to keep my formulas around. So I might rename this as Concatenate formula. With full name, okay? Then I'm going to go ahead and insert a blank column over here. I'm going to put it on this other side. No, I'm not, because that's going to show an error. Okay, so if I do this, I'm just going to highlight my data. I'm going to do Control C or right click copy. And then over here, I'm going to right click in the cell and I'm going to do paste values. If I just did a paste, regular paste, like Control V, it can sometimes mess up the data. See, the formula is still here, and we don't want that formula to show. So I want to do the Control paste values by right-clicking and selecting on that clipboard with the 1, 2, 3 on it. So now when I click in a cell, it has the data, the contents there. It doesn't have the formula. So this can be helpful, especially if you're doing some like merge files and things like that, and you need that data to appear as data and not as the formula that you've written in. I'm going to go and show you just quickly about how I sometimes use that conditional formatting for getting rid of duplicates. There's other ways to get rid of duplicates in an Excel file, but I just want to show you a quick example. So here's a file that I got from somebody with a list of registrations. So one of the nice things in Excel you can do is when you highlight data, you see how the counter is going up and it's telling me I'm highlighting 295 rows, okay? If I click here, if I go down one more cell, you see how there's not anything in that cell for Deb Knowles. If you look over on the right-hand side here where it says count, it says 295. So if I include that bottom cell, it's still going to say 295 because it's a blank cell. So we can see that I've already applied the conditional formatting to this column, and it's saying that we have 295. So when I come over here and I've made another spreadsheet and I've removed all those duplicates, you can see here that now I have only 261 because we had about 30 people who registered twice and just didn't realize that they had registered twice because we use that duplicate value on this column. One of the other things that I want to show you is another way to paste data. So say you needed these names to be in columns instead of rows. We can do something called transposing our data. So for example, I can like highlight a few rows of data. I'm going to copy. So that time I did the right click. I'm coming over to another sheet and I'm going to go ahead and do paste special. So that's over on our home tab. So one of the things that we can do is transpose our columns. So you see this option where it has the arrow pointing to down and the arrow pointing to the right. You click that and now it's put all of my my column headers are now rows and my rows are now in the columns, which can be confusing, but sometimes you might need to do that. For example, I had proposal ID numbers for our sessions for Extension Annual Conference, and I needed those to go across the columns instead of down the rows, so I can make assignments for our committee members. So I just took that data and transposed it when I copied it, and then used a formula to do some counting. all of which are things that Brian Butler is going to be doing in the Excel 102 demo that's coming up next week. So those were the main things that I was going to show you today. I think those are the most helpful things as far as beginning Excel types of things. There are so many things that you can make Excel do, and there's a few people on this call that that know what I'm talking about. So there are definitely some advanced features that you can use in Excel, but we wanted to get at the basics today so you guys have, that foundation to work from. So do we have any questions? Because I either talked really fast or you guys are just really, really quiet, or both. Most likely it's both.
As I say, Debbie, you did a great job. I've learned some new things, especially with the color coding. I would go in by hand and color code.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do anything by hand, Shalice,
Yeah.
in Excel. let Excel do the work for you.
Yeah, working harder. So that was very helpful.
I noticed that my conditional formulas or my conditional formatting kind of redid itself. I'm not sure what happened there, but probably I was messing around with it and didn't realize what I did.
Gotcha.
Okay. Anybody have questions?
Yeah, say anything else from anyone?
What was the very first thing? Okay, hold on. I gotta come back to Kevin. What was the very first thing you did regarding the sheet title? So if you want to change, are you talking about changing the sheet names? I think that's what Kevin was after. So I double click on this sheet name down here, or in that case, I triple clicked. You can also do a right click and rename sheet. Okay, so there's a bunch of different ways you can get to at the same thing. So I can do rename here. So another nice thing about the tabs down here, if you have a lot of different tabs, you can, and you're a color person, because I usually do like color in my files. It helps me sort things out. So remember where we did session 1 was originally green. I'm not sure why this changed the formatting. So I'm going to change this back real quick. So this is green. Okay. So we had that session 1 green. So say we want to call attention to session 1, we know this was green. So I can right click on my sheet name and I can do a tab color. So I want that to be the same color as my examples down over here. So if I did a separate sheet that had session 2, I could color that one yellow by right clicking and using that tab color. That's another nice way to organize your data. Let's see. It would be nice to have a cheat sheet. While we are recording this, I'll see what I can do, Angelia, about a cheat sheet. Paste values in Concatenate, yes. Where we'll be able to. Shalice, did you already answer that question? Yes. About the recording? Okay.
So I'm either gonna post it to the webpage, that the support staff conference webpage, or the YouTube playlist.
Okay. All right.
But I'll send out an email where the location will be, so everybody knows.
I do want to give like a little warning. People, when you're sorting your data, please be sure that you've selected everything that's in the file. Some people will try to, for example, highlight this much data and then come up here to the sort and do sort. And you see how that messed up everything? Alexander Dixon's email is now tied to Andy Alvarez. So please be careful when you're doing sorting, okay? That's why I kind of showed you how to use the filter feature to sort. I'm gonna just quick undo that. Accidents can happen though, that has happened before. So be very careful when you're sorting your data. Another way you can select everything in the sheet is to click up here in the upper left-hand corner. Do you see that triangle? That will select everything in your sheet. And if I just had a single column, headers, I would probably do that method and then just do the sort over here. Another way you can do sort is I like to highlight all of the rows of my data. And again, if I have hundreds and hundreds, that gets a little bit longer to do. So I click over here for sort, and I can do a custom sort. And I want to sort this by their last name. So let's say column D, cell values A to Z. You can also use your conditional formatting to do sorting. Say I want to sort everybody and do so that session 1 people are at the top of the list and session 2 and then the next session. I think that's column O. You can do sorts based on cell color.
And then Debbie, there's a question as well.
Okay.
With the filters, all the information stays together, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Another, training we should probably have at some point, and I don't know how many people would be interested in it, but maybe doing a mail merge between Word and Excel, whether it's to send out an email. I don't know. Some of you may be signed up for the Qualtrics Nelnet session that I'm doing tomorrow. So Shalice sent me the names of the people, for example, that were signed up for tomorrow's Qualtrics session. And I used their email addresses to find out which of those folks hadn't upgraded their Qualtrics accounts yet. And I did a mail merge email last night and just said, hey, before the session on Friday, make sure you upgrade your Qualtrics account, and just sent them all directions. And I used a mail merge between my Excel file that Chili sent me and Word and Outlook. So it's nice to be able to know how to use Excel.
All right.
Any other questions?
Is there anything else you wanted to wrap up with, Debbie?
I think I had, thank you, Shalice. I think I might have had one more slide. So hold please. That did have a few Go links in it.
Can I talk about next week in Excel 102 real quick?
Sure.
After you're done, of course. You let me know.
Okay, hold on just a second. Did that change for you?
Yes.
Brian, I didn't even see you there. Hi.
Hi.
So that's just a few links while Brian is talking.
Yeah, so next, probably should figure this out. Next Thursday? No. Yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday or Monday.
Tuesday.
27th?
Not a good start. Yeah, next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Sort of the next step of what Debbie just covered. So I did something similar, like an Excel kind of data analysis session a few months back via Zoom through kind of LOD's outreach work. It'll be very, very similar to that. So if you attended that or you watched that, it might be a bit repetitive, which isn't always a bad thing, especially with Excel, just seeing tasks happen again. So yeah, so a tiny step forward, I guess, from what Debbie covered. So we'll do some simple math, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing various cell values. We're going to sum some stuff up. We're going to work with some basic formulas. So things like finding the average of a series, or median, or the minimum or maximum. I'll use Debby's sort of find and replace function to kind of code some data. So if you collected like words as data and you want to convert those to numbers to do some math on it, we'll do that. We'll do some counting formulas. So ways to go and look in data and count how many times a certain thing shows up, so that you can do things like frequencies and percentages. So yeah, just some basic functions and basic mathematics in order to sort of like, maybe you collected a small data set or a large data set and you want to do some kind of basic analysis of it in order to report on it, or to talk about it in your county to kind of make a decision or something like that. So that would cover data, that would cover, numbers. So if you're at all involved with any kind of financial stuff and you want to use these functions to do things to dollar amounts, it might be helpful as well. Yeah, and then some slightly advanced stuff like, using if-then statements and categorizing continuous variables and fun stuff like that. So again, it's nothing crazy, but I think it's a real nice progression from what Debby covered today.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, for that sneak peek. And that'll be helpful for me.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that session. But again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you being here, and we're excited for our next session, which is happening at 1 o'clock. So you have a little time for lunch. So thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.